Welcome to Driving Customer Experience Through Training. My name is Cathy Palochko. I'm a Senior Vice President for GP Strategies, and I happen to lead the automotive practice. And I'm going to be speaking to you today about the experiences of one of our clients recently had in launching a new brand. We live today in the age of the customer. What that means is that customers today are empowered with information. Anything that they want to know about your brand, your product, your services, the price of your products and services is available to them from the comfort of their living room. That's changing the equation that we have with our consumers. It's putting them firmly in control of the buying process, and it means that we've lost some of our power. We're no longer the holders of that information, they are, and that puts them firmly in control of the buying and the shopping experience. That also means that the customer experience is the next competitive battleground. Research today shows that 72% of businesses are making significant investments in the customer experience. In fact, it's their top priority. By the same token, it also means that $62 billion is being lost due to poor customer service. That creates a training imperative for companies like ours. In the automotive industry, that issue is only compounded by the fact that since customers have so much data available to them from the comfort of their living room, they're now in fact reducing their shopping to less than 2 dealerships per sale. So just a few years ago, that was as high as 5 dealerships per sale. You'd go out and kick the tires on a Saturday morning and look at lots of different vehicles, and you'd move from dealership to dealership, on average visiting 5 or 6 dealerships. Now today, some estimates are that that's as low as 1.2 dealerships. Again, that places a considerable amount of pressure on getting it right the first time, getting the sale right the first time. As I mentioned, we're working in the automotive industry, and that's quite the cluttered landscape. The challenge that my client faced is there are 33 brands for consumers to choose from today, from mass market brands to luxury brands. My client happens to be a luxury brand. So when you reduce the landscape down to luxury brands, you still have a lot of players from which consumers can choose. My brand happens to be Genesis. Genesis is the luxury entry from the Hyundai family. So not only are they entering a very competitive luxury make, but they're doing so with the Hyundai badge as part of their challenge that they're dealing with. Another challenge that my client was dealing with is the fact that our training audience is a car salesman. Now, some accounts indicate that a car salesman is about as popular to visit as the dentist. It's a challenging job, to be sure. It's generally a profession that's not well thought of. It's not, therefore, a desirable position, and so we don't always get the best applicants. But it is a very demanding position when you consider any automotive line carrying upwards of a dozen different models. That's a lot of product knowledge that these people need to learn. They need to learn the ins and outs and the workings of every vehicle. They need to be able to be providing expert guidance and advice to you, the consumer. So that's a huge learning demand. On top of that, there's new technology all over the automotive landscape, from connected cars to online shopping services to post-sale services that allow you to connect your vehicle to the service department and get health checks. There's lots for them to know from a technology standpoint. In addition, it's also a very demanding job from a time perspective. Salespeople are often, almost always, working weekends. They're working long days, nights. Whenever we want to be buying a car, they have to be available to us. As a result, that makes it a high turnover and low tenure position as well, that has historically relied on negotiation. And currently today, with the advent of a lot of alternative buying services, our pressure is under a lot of pressure to change. So all of that created a very challenging environment when Genesis decided to come to the market with an all-new luxury line of vehicles. Historically, we would approach the training challenge for a new vehicle launch with looking at everything that a salesperson needs to know to effectively sell a car. So our paradigm might look something like this. What all do they need to know? And then with that knowledge, what do they need to do? And then what outcomes do they need to produce? But knowing that we had such a big task ahead of us, we decided to take a different approach. We actually flipped this paradigm. So our traditional paradigm goes from left to right. We flipped it and said, let's start out with just focusing on ultimately what salespeople need to do. And then in order to do that, or what outcomes they need to produce, what do they need to do? And based on what they need to do, what do they need to know? So again, we focused on teaching only what was relevant to the outcomes that our sales audience needed to produce. That led us to be guided by, and we co-created with our clients, the Genesis Credo. So what I want you to notice about this credo is words like making our guests feel special, or empowering consumers to delight, or having experiences that are respectful and inspire trust and confidence. There's a lot of emotional aspects to this customer experience. And that's really what the luxury consumer wants. Again, when you're launching a luxury brand, you're bringing a different kind of consumer into a Hyundai dealership. And there's another key difference that our client faced. Unlike Toyota and Lexus, or Honda and Acura, or Nissan and Infiniti, who are related companies but all have separate facilities, Hyundai was deciding to launch their product, Genesis, or their new line, through their existing infrastructure of dealers. So that meant that our target audience of car salespeople were actually car salespeople in a Hyundai dealership. So lots of challenges that we faced, and we knew what we needed to do was focus on delivering a great customer experience. So how did we do that? We have a three-pronged solution that I'd like to share with you today. It's based on personas, simulated interviews, and storytelling, something that we've heard about in our keynote session today. So let me start with personas. Very oftentimes when you're launching a new brand, you're launching a new product or service, you connect with the marketing department. And the marketing department tells you, here's who's going to be buying our product. And they give you a customer profile, usually made up of a lot of demographics about income and age and shopping preferences. What we decided was that in order to really get into the heads of our consumers, what we needed to focus on is truly who these people are from a human standpoint. So we chose to use personas instead of profiles. Personas are really a robust, deep description of who the segments of target buyers are. Personas provide qualitative data about your consumer audience versus quantitative data. So let me share a little bit more with you on personas. Personas, and this is a definition by HubSpot, are a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data. They're really a narrative that describes the goals, the motives, the habits, what people like, don't like, where they shop, how they spend their time. It allows us, in effect, to build a character that represents our target consumer. So that's what we did. We set out to create personas for our new brand, Genesis. We created a multifaceted group of people who had diverse backgrounds and interests and likes. And we named them, we gave them positions, we gave them backgrounds, and we hired actors to portray these. Now, what was important is that we didn't want our salespeople, who are very astute, they're good people. We didn't want them to detect that these were actors. We really wanted them to be believable roles. So in developing these personas, we not only gave all of these people a long list of questions that they were going to answer, but we gave them secondary sets of questions that if you were this person, how would you answer it? For example, we might ask one of our people here, if you were this person, if you were a real estate developer or a real estate agent, who would you have voted for in the last election and why? We really wanted them to get into the character and be able to portray that. So personas and being the character, being the people, the target buyers for these vehicles was a very important aspect of our development. So part 2, simulated interviews. One of the key skills that car salespeople need to be successful is the ability to extract information from us as a consumer to understand what our wants and needs are in buying a vehicle. That's often conducted through what we call a needs analysis, or in this case, a guest interview. Now, very often we put salespeople, when they come to training, in role play situations where we ask them to partner with somebody else and basically play out how an interview should go. There's a couple of problems with that. First of all, most people consider role plays as a workplace form of torture or humiliation, okay? Whenever you say role play to an audience, big groans. All right, so we wanted to stay away from that traditional, hokey, embarrassing kind of role play situation. So we moved over into the simulation area. Now there's a lot of things going on in the world of simulation with AR and VR, but we weren't that sophisticated. We really wanted to model the typical work environment that our sales associates or our car sales people played in. So we went and created a simulated environment, not unlike the cockpit of an airplane, where they could actually have a good, enjoyable learning experience that would reinforce some of the content that we were sharing with our participants. So what we did was we took our personas and we created a case study or a simulation comprised of those questions that I talked about. So we took 26 questions that a salesperson would typically ask, and we had every one of our customers answer them. We then programmed them into an interactive kiosk. So imagine a large screen, not unlike the one that we're looking at here, that was touchscreen and allowed you to walk up to it and say, well, I want to know more about what my customer thinks about shopping online. And you'd press on shopping online, and a video would pop up of one of our personas, and they'd tell you about how they like to online shop. So we programmed those then into an exercise, and we created a gallery where our sales associates had to go out and get to know these 5 customers. And we ended each of the interviews here with that guest's definition of luxury. So now we're placing them in a simulated environment that's not unlike the one that they work in, and we're allowing them to get to know this new luxury customer who's new coming into their dealership that they've never seen before, looking to buy this new brand. And here's a little bit of what that looked like. So you can see here we have a group of car salespeople. We have an interactive kiosk, and they're doing their own research on those customers. This was very well received. They learned a lot of valuable information from it. So now we've come to our third prong. Our third prong is storytelling. And one of the keys in automotive sales that we impart upon our learners is that facts tell, stories sell. We don't want salespeople who literally just walk up to a car and say, well, it's got this, and it's got this, and it's got this. We want people who can actually help our guests understand and relate to what it would be like to drive this vehicle, to own this vehicle, to see it parked into the driveway, to see how features would help create a better driving experience or a better safety experience. So, a good salesperson knows how to talk. A great salesperson knows how to tell stories. So we taught our folks the art of storytelling. Stories are much easier to remember than facts. Stories are emotional. And going back to our Genesis Credo, remember a lot of what customer experience about is connecting emotionally. So we knew that storytelling would be a good way to do that. And stories are also entertainment, so we knew at the same time we'd be creating a more entertaining experience for our guests as well. So how did we do it? Very simply. First, we talked about storytelling. What makes a good story? We talked about the fact that storytelling has been around for ages. If you think back to your childhood, there are 2 things that you probably said early on to your parents. One was, I'm hungry, and the other was, tell me a story. We all love to hear stories, and this taps into a salesperson's innate ability or gift of gab, so to speak. So all we needed to do was give them the formula of storytelling. So we taught them how to tell a good story. Then they had an opportunity to practice that storytelling, again with our personas. So we wanted them to do everything with that luxury guest in mind. So we brought back again our personas. We said, here's their situation, several different customers. And then we gave them features about the vehicle or features about the buying experience or the ownership experience of a Genesis vehicle. And we asked them to create stories around either how features would work on the vehicle, or how a feature would have helped in a certain situation, or a feature's purpose, or design details of the vehicle. And we literally had people work in triads to develop stories, and so everyone left this training having, one, a better understanding of the luxury customer because they got in touch with the personas. Two, they had had an opportunity to practice their needs analysis or interviewing skills with these personas, learn more about the luxury buyer. And three, they had an opportunity to turn around and translate their newfound product knowledge into stories that these luxury customers would appreciate. So what did that result in? Our personas, simulated interviews, and storytelling. What were our outcomes? Our outcomes were terrific. We took a typical smile sheet or a level 1 evaluation at the end of our training. We asked 3 questions, among others, but storytelling is an effective way to present products to guests. That was considered by most to be very effective. I will be able to immediately apply the material I learned today. Again, almost 90% of folks agreed with that statement. And finally, the activities I experienced today were helpful in learning the material. Here we had a little bit of a split between extremely helpful and very helpful, but still overall highly successful. But the real proof is in the pudding. The Genesis brand launched in 2016 in the fall. They had, at that time, 0% market share. Today, just a few days ago, prior to this conference, I talked to my client, and in the segments that they complete, they were earning close to 10% market share, which is a significant accomplishment and one that our clients attribute to the approach that we took in training. So that, in a nutshell, is our presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.